The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept it, hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is day 2 already of this 5-day Elder Sesshin here in March 2015 at Mountain Gate. And as we said yesterday in Teisho, although it's called an Elder Sesshin, it is really for everyone. And ever since we began holding these particular sesshins, one a year, and it's part of our tandem 2 sesshin in a row in March, April, here at Mountain Gate. We have sometimes people staying for both sesshin. And although there's a little bit more rest time built into the Elder Sesshin, still, anyone who is able to attend Sesshin can attend this one. It's not just for beginners or people who are older. And we have people of all ages attending these Sesshins. Training at Sogenji, where the Zen training at Sogenji Zen Temple in Okayama, Japan, is the most intensive in the world. And one of the things that is done there is there are a number of sesshin that are multiples in a row. When I was living there, we would do a 7-day sesshin the end of November, and 3 or 4 days later we would have Rohatsu sesshin, which is an 8-day sesshin, during which the last 2 nights at a minimum people stay up. It's actually required that you stay up all night those last 2 nights, and then 3 or 4 more days, and there's what they call the 2nd December Ozashin at Sogenji. And it's a wonderful way to really, really deepen your practice very, very significantly. It sounds daunting, but it's amazingly easy, because you don't really come back down, so to speak, from each sesshin before you enter the next one. And so you're already geared up for the next sesshin before you even begin it. And that makes it so much easier, actually. And so we try to do something like that here at Mountain Gate. For a while in the early days, we did a November and then Rohatsu sesshin within 2 or 3 days of each other. But unfortunately in America, end of November is Thanksgiving, and for people not living here and training here full time, of course they want to be with their families at Thanksgiving. And so that has produced a little bit bigger gap in more recent years between our November sesshin, our end of November sesshin, and our Rohatsu sesshin. But we always do this double header in some version of March, April, and this year it begins in March, and the 2nd sesshin, this sesshin ends Wednesday night, and Saturday night the 7-day sesshin begins. And as I said, it's a tremendous opportunity for people to really take their practice deep. Sesshin in general is such an opportunity. And of course, if you can do 2 in close proximity, it's even more so. Mitra-roshi, who was Kappa-roshi's last of 3 teachers, said that doing a sesshin, a 7-day sesshin in particular, is equivalent to 2 to 3 years of daily practice. And it is so, because you sit long hours. A good number of hours during the day. The majority of the day is on the cushion. Of course, there are breaks. Of course, there's kinhin, the walking meditation. Of course, there are meals. And of course, there are rest periods. But nonetheless, there are quite a few hours of zazen in each day. And when we're out in our daily life, we don't have the opportunity to do that level of practice because we have other responsibilities. Today, I would like to share with you some of the teachings of a Tibetan Buddhist master, a very young one actually, His name is Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, and this book of his is called The Joy of Living. And it's a very interesting title given how it started out for him. He was, or he's considered a Rinpoche, and he's also, I believe, considered a Tulku, which is someone who was previously a master in previous lives and was discovered in this current life to have been the reincarnation of a particular specific previous master, and I don't know which one it was. But his father also was a highly renowned master, Buddhist master. And I don't know which of the four lineages in Tibetan Buddhism he is in, they are in, and it really doesn't matter in a certain way. What is most important is what he says in the very beginning, because here he is, a young child born into this family full of spiritual practitioners, deeply recognized, deeply realized spiritual practitioners, and surrounded by monks and nuns, as well as his own family, of which, of course, as he said, his father was a known spiritual teacher, a very highly regarded spiritual teacher, and apparently one of the ones who escaped from Tibet just before the communist takeover. So this is the milieu in which Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche was born. And yet he writes that he was plagued, even as a young child, by fears and anxiety. And let me share this with you in his own words. He starts out, the essence of Buddhist practice is not so much an effort at changing your thoughts or your behavior so that you can become a better person, but in realizing that no matter what you may think about the circumstances that defined your life, you're already good, whole, and complete. You're already good, whole, and complete. This is a fundamental basis, a fundamental understanding, a fundamental belief in Buddhism, is that we are already everything we need to be. We're already perfect, whole, and complete, lacking nothing. But we don't realize it. And that's why people do the things that they do, some of which is very dysfunctional, some of which is downright evil. But it's because we don't recognize our own innate goodness, our own innate perfection, that we act in ways that cause harm and pain and suffering. And the practice is really fundamentally about uncovering that innate perfection that we are. And the reason why it's so difficult, or can be so difficult, can feel so difficult, let's put it that way, is because we hold tightly to our beliefs that we're anything but. And we hold tightly to our habit patterns developed over lifetimes of attachment. And the fundamental attachment is that of a self-image. We have this idea, this picture in our mind of who we are, and it's not who we are. And yet it causes this untold grief. Think about when you get embarrassed. That's that self-image being bumped into, challenged. Think about when you get angry. It's the same thing. Think about how it would be if you could get this monkey off your back and live your own perfection right from the get-go. How free, how at ease you would be, how you would naturally behave in accord with the precepts, the Bodhisattva precepts, without having to be told. Because our innate goodness would move us in that direction. And if we're not being pulled around by our ideas, by our grasping at things, our chasing after happiness, our attempts to avoid difficulty and pain, whether it's another person that we don't like, whether it's a situation we don't want to be in, we try to avoid it. Whereas there's a miracle that can happen if we walk straight in. And certainly in life, there are many things that people cannot avoid. I was just recently reading of a man in his 60s who was born and raised in the island kingdom of Vanuatu, which was in the news recently because it had a terrible, terrible traffic storm that devastated this group of islands that are this little country. It is known as one of the most vulnerable places on Earth to live. They have tidal waves, they have landslides, they have earthquakes, they have typhoons, and this man has lived through every single one of them. And one of these occasions, when he was a young boy, he was staying over at somebody else's house, and there was a landslide, and it took his house with it. It killed his father and his younger brother. His mother survived by grabbing onto the rafters, and in the process, her back was broken. She eventually did get rescued and survived to an old age and died in peace, according to him. But he also lived through being relocated any number of times because of volcanic eruptions, because of tidal waves, because of tropical storms, because of landslides. And he was simply pretty pragmatic about it. Now, most of us don't have to deal with so much in our lives, but we do have to deal with certain things. And a lot of what we have to deal with, other than natural events, and even there is, it's not quite exactly the way it looks like it is, because what makes all the difference in the world is our attitude towards our life, our attitude towards the people around us, our attitude towards what we are doing and what we are asked to do and what we are not able to do. Attitude makes all the difference in the world, and attitude is dependent upon this self-image. When we're not caught in a self-image, it's far easier to flow with circumstance. And when we are able to flow with circumstance, where is the problem? Truly. To continue with our young Rinpoche's story, it's about recognizing the inherent potential of your mind. In other words, Buddhism is not so much concerned with getting well as with recognizing that you are right here, right now, as whole, as good as you can ever possibly be. And that is perfect. And then he says, you don't believe me, do you? Well, for a long time, neither did I. I would like to begin by making a confession, which might sound strange coming from someone regarded as a reincarnated Lama, who is supposed to have done all sorts of wonderful things in previous lifetimes. From earliest childhood, I was haunted by feelings of fear and anxiety. My heart raced, and I often broke out in a sweat whenever I was around people I didn't know. There wasn't any reason for the discomfort I experienced. I lived in a beautiful valley, surrounded by a loving family, and scores of monks, nuns, and others who were deeply engaged in learning how to awaken inner peace and happiness. Nevertheless, anxiety accompanied me like a shadow. I was probably about 6 years old when I first began to experience some relief. Inspired mostly by a child's curiosity, I began climbing into the hills around the valley where I grew up to explore the caves where generations of Buddhist practitioners had spent their lives in meditation. Sometimes I'd get into a cave and pretend to meditate. Of course, I really had no idea how to meditate. I'd just sit there mentally repeating Om Mani Padme Hum, which is a classic mantra that is Tibetan practice mantra. And he goes on to say that it is familiar to almost every Tibetan, Buddhist or not. Sometimes I'd sit for hours mentally reciting the mantra without understanding what I was doing. Nevertheless, I started to feel a sense of calm stealing over me. Yet, even after 3 years of sitting in caves, trying to figure out how to meditate, my anxiety increased until it became what would probably be diagnosed as a full-blown anxiety attack, panic disorder. For a while, I received some informal instructions from my grandfather, a great meditation master who preferred to keep his accomplishments quiet. But finally, I summoned the courage to ask my mother to approach my father, Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, with my request to study formally with him. My father agreed, and for the next 3 years, he instructed me in various methods of meditation. So here he is, at last getting some instructions in meditation. I didn't understand much at first. I tried to rest my mind in the way he taught, but my mind wouldn't rest. Now, anybody familiar with this situation? We come to practice with all kinds of ideas about it. We're going to sit blissfully. We're going to find ourselves at ease in all situations. It's going to be a piece of cake, right? And then we start and we sit down, we get taught how to do some basic practices, and maybe we join a group and we start sitting. And initially there's a kind of a honeymoon period. We're kind of proud that we can call ourselves a Zen student, and sometimes we even get very pompous about it and try to tell other people about it and rope them into the practice, which doesn't really work, by the way. And everything is so new. How to sit, the atmosphere, the environment in the Zendo is wonderful. The smell of the incense, the bells and the clappers, and it's all interesting trying to figure out how to sit. And then the honeymoon period ends. And suddenly we're faced with ourselves. We're exploring our mind. That's what Buddhist practice is about. It's looking into our own mind. It's exploring. It's not trying to find something outside of ourselves. It's exploring inwardly. And what a marvelous adventure that can be. But as part of that adventure, we're going to become aware of our, as a good friend of mine likes to say, stuck places. Our stuck places, places where we're caught in ideas and assumptions, and that have moved us to behave in ways that are less than exemplary. And as we do our zazen, we become aware of those less than exemplary situations, and it can feel not very nice. Our Rinpoche speaks to this as well. He said, I actually found myself growing more distracted than before. All sorts of things annoyed me. Physical discomfort, background noises, conflicts with other people. Years later, I would come to realize that I wasn't actually getting worse, and this is something very important to realize. We're not getting worse, we're getting more aware of what's always been there. And that, if anything, should be motivation to go deeper, because it's in going deeper that we can let go of the motivation to behave in those dysfunctional ways. I was simply becoming more aware of the constant stream of thoughts and sensations I'd never recognized before. Having watched other people go through the same process, I realize now that this is a common experience for people who are just learning how to examine their mind through meditation. It is really classic. And it can go on for a while until we actually get a sense. We begin to get the hang of it and begin to realize that actually there's tremendous benefit in seeing these dysfunctional behaviors, because it's only then that we can stop. And there's something about realizing with great clarity in our meditation that we have behaved in a particularly not so nice way that motivates us not to do it again. And it's almost as if we have a little something planted in our brain as a result of that, that next time we're tempted to behave like that, it's like, wait a minute, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to go there anymore. And we don't. Of course, we can choose to go there anyway. We can override this warning system. We can pretend that it's a not dysfunctional way to behave, particularly if there's something about it that we want to do. Then we can do what's known as a spiritual end run around our issues and ignore it. But hopefully we won't do that, because in my experience at least, when we see clearly our behavior and we're horrified by whatever it was, the tone of voice we used, the attitude we expressed unconsciously, because we're not conscious of these things, then we feel a great deal of regret and remorse, and we really don't want to behave like that. And it's much easier not to then. Then he continues on later. One of the most terrible moments came shortly before my 12th birthday, when I was sent to Shirabling for a special purpose, one that I'd been dreading for a long time. It was the formal enthronement as the incarnation of the first Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche. This was recognition that that's who he appeared to be, and the Tibetans have this very formal arrangement. If you saw the movie Kundun, which was about the Dalai Lama's life, you saw the scenes in which the High Lamas approached his family and held out some implements, an assortment of implements, some of which had been used by the person that was to be considered his former incarnation. And if he reached for those and chose them over the others, then there was a sense that his familiarity with them indicated that he had come in from the previous life. And so here was this young man who was terrified a good part of his young life already, and now he's about to be the head event in this very formal ceremony of enthronement as the new Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche. He says, hundreds of people attended the ceremony, and I spent hours accepting their gifts and giving the blessings as if I were really already somebody important instead of just a terrified 12-year-old boy. As the hours passed, I turned so pale that my older brother, Tsokni Rinpoche, who was standing beside me, thought I was going to faint. When I look back on this period and on all the kindness that was shown to me by my teachers, I wonder how I ever could have felt as fearful as I did. But in hindsight, I can see that the basis of my anxiety lay in the fact that I hadn't truly recognized the true nature of my mind. I had a basic intellectual understanding, but not the kind of direct experience that would have enabled me to see that whatever terror or discomfort I felt was a product of my own mind, and that the unshakable basis of serenity, confidence, and happiness was closer to me than my own eyes. We take for real our mind states. And as a result of these various different mind states, whatever they happen to be in any given circumstance, we see the circumstance through the lens of that mind state. It's distorted. We don't see it clearly. We see it from a particular perspective. And it's not an accurate one. Many, many years ago, when I was in grade school, I went to grade school in Canada, and it was in the old days, as my husband used to say, back when I was young and dinosaurs roamed the earth and knighthood was in flower. Well, there weren't any dinosaurs by then, but there may as well have been, probably. And we all sat in rows, and I still find myself, when I have nothing to do with my hands, sitting with them clasped, because that was what we were required to do if we were not doing something with our hands, which meant writing. And so we would sit with our hands folded and clasped on top of our desks whenever we were listening to anything. And in that particular class, at that particular time, every so often there would be a radio program played. And we would all sit there quietly listening to this radio program. I just remember one in particular where it had to do with somebody flying an airplane, which was kind of sad because one of my classmates had just lost her father, who had been a bush pilot, in a crash. At any rate, there was a little girl sitting in the aisle next to me, and she kept to herself, and she was clearly suffering. Her skin, she probably had psoriasis, I realize now, but at any rate, she may also have been abused because she had that vibe about her. And I, at one point, in a fit of camaraderie and empathy, reached over and touched her hand, as if to say, "You got a friend here." And she immediately got upset and told the teacher I was trying to hurt her. This is an example, it's a rather extreme example of how people can misinterpret it in various different situations depending on their mind state. But we do it all the time. We do it all the time. We think somebody's mad at us when they're probably not mad at us at all. They may have had a bad hair day, or they may not even be angry at all. But our perception is that they are angry at us. And that is the work of our self-image. If we are truly to be happy in an ongoing manner, if we are truly to be joyful, if we are truly to enjoy life thoroughly as we are born to do, really, then we have to begin to see clearly, because otherwise our vision is skewed. Our perceptions are distorted, and we draw conclusions about ourselves, our circumstances, about other people, none of which is accurate, and much of which causes us suffering. With our Buddhist practice, we turn inward and we examine, we take a look at the workings of our mind. This is one reason why we have to sit still. One reason why we have these periods of so long, in our case it's 25 minutes generally here at Mountain Gate, of no moving. You don't scratch an itch. You don't twist and turn or shift your posture. And that is specifically so that you are no longer tempted to distract yourself from the matter at hand, which is examining, observing your own mind. We go into avoidance mode a good deal of our life. Some people are quite famous for it. I once met a man who never stayed anywhere more than 3 days. He was traveling all over the world, and he was rather unpleasant to be around, so it was fairly easy to see why he never stayed anywhere more than 3 days, because when he was imposing on people, he quickly got the message that it was time to move on. But there was something fundamental that he was trying to avoid facing in that constant traveling. Therapists call it pulling a geographical. And it was sad, because as long as he kept on with that lifestyle, he was avoiding whatever it was that was painful or difficult or unpleasant that he wanted to avoid. And that is one of the things we are called upon to do in our practice, is look straight into our mind, not around the corner, hiding away from things that feel unpleasant or difficult, but bravely straight through, right into the workings of our mind, exploring deeply, searching for the real truth. The great Rinzai Zen master Rinzai, Linji in Chinese, would say, there's a true person of no rank coming in and out of the doors of your senses. If you haven't seen it yet, see it now, see it now. And he added, in his eyes, it is called seeing. In your ears, it's called hearing. Your tongue, it's called tasting. Your hands, it's called grasping. And its feet, it's called carrying you. Who is this true master? This true person of no rank, coming in and out of the doors of your senses. Coming in and out of the doors of your senses, then this isn't me? No, it's not. Then what is? And this is what we're called upon to find out. And in the search, gradually we become more and more free. And if we persist to the final point, we will truly be liberated. And in the process, we'll be bringing along a lot of other people with us, because that's what happens when we do our practice. It influences countless human beings, animals too for that matter. One of the odd things that I began to notice after I've been doing practice for several years is that when I would walk in parks and in fields, little animals wouldn't run away from me anymore. Snakes would stay there, little mice would stay there. Apparently I didn't frighten these little critters, whereas of course I had before. But that's not why we practice. We practice in order to uncover that perfection that we are, and to move in directions where we are living that perfection, where our innate compassion and wisdom function freely in everything we do or say or think. This is the real reason for our practice. Yes, it's difficult, depending on what we have to face, but when we face it, you'll find that there's an ease about it that is quite freeing. I think this is enough for today. We'll stop now and recite the 4 vows. Shujo muhen segando bono mujin segandan homon muryo segangaku butsuro mujo seganjo shujo muhen segando bono mujin segandan homon muryo segangaku butsuro mujo seganjo shujo muhen segando bono mujin segandan homon muryo segangaku butsuro mujo Seganjo. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to liberate them. Desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. The way of liberation is unsurpassable. I vow to become it.